Warning. This program contains strong language, auditory violence, and mental nudity. It is intended only for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to your uncensored home for World of Warcraft news and opinions. With your host, Berserker, this is Unshackled Fury.
Summer is around the corner, secrets have been unsealed, as the saga of the Shadowlands slips into slumber, and the silly season sets in. So welcome back to your uncensored home for World of Warcraft news and opinions, Unshackled Fury. I'm your host, Berserker. This is episode 110, and on today's show, we're discussing patch 9.2.5's megaton lore bombs, what they mean for our beloved story and franchise, and how soon we may be on our next adventure. But first, I want to say thanks to everyone who reached out following my last episode and my interview with Jez Corden. Lots of very positive feedback, and I can't say how much I appreciate all of you that reached out or spread the message on social media that this interview was up. I had a really great time. Jez, obviously a big name on the Xbox side. I have a feeling that once the Activision Blizzard Microsoft purchase goes down and is final, I have a feeling Jez is going to be in the middle of a lot of stuff that is important to us, and you're likely to see him in our Warcraft neighborhood a lot more frequently. So it was a great opportunity for me to get a chance to chat with him and pick his mind about things that are important to us and will continue to be. So thanks again to Jez, obviously, for coming on, and thanks to all of you for checking it out and spreading the word. A piece of news that I want to give to all of you listening to this show, whenever that might be. I'm going on vacation. I'm going to take a little summer break. I've been doing about 6 months solid here of shows. Seems to be in the right spot for this game. Our rhythm, where we're at, last patch of an expansion, seems like a good time. I need a break, quite frankly, and not just from this. You know, you have to take a break every now and again, as Nav and I talked about at length over the years on this show. When you get to a point where you're like, oof, I feel like I'm running on fumes or whatever else, I just need a little time to rest and recover. That's what we got going on here. And not just, like I said, from the podcast. For those that know, I've also been helping to coach my son's baseball team this year, and their season just ended yesterday, the day before recording this podcast. I'm a dad. I got to brag about this. They won the city championship for their division. Very proud of them. It was a big day yesterday, but it was also the last day of a very, very long season, and I think my body finally had enough when, within a couple of hours of that game ending and us getting home, I just couldn't move very well. It was an entire season's worth, even for the dads and the parents, right? You're out there, you're still running drills, you're doing things, you're out there. It's a long season, and my legs and my arms and everything was just like, all right, we're done. And I definitely felt it, and it was a big signal to me, along with everything else, that it's time to take a little time off. So, gonna take a little summer break here. We'll be back. This is not one of those disappearing into the ether things. I will be coming back. I don't know exactly when. I'm sure my ratings will take a hit And who knows what sort of memo I might get from management. But I'll be back. And I encourage all of you to take a break from things in your life as well as need be to refresh. I had a conversation with somebody recently about challenges in their life and the things going on. And one of the things we talked about is it's sort of like the example of when you're on a plane and the oxygen masks drop. You got to put your mask on first, because if you're not doing well, then you're not really in a position to do well for anybody else or yourself. So that's where we're at. Not going to be, super long. It might be a couple of months. I'll say that. It might be a couple of months. I'm not really sure. It's mid-June now. Got a birthday coming up. That's also why I want to take a break. I always take vacations around my birthday. But, sometime later in the summer when we've got some more Dragonflight stuff going on, I'll talk about that later. That'll be kind of the impetus for the return of this show from summer break. So that's the deal. And I thank you all for your patience and sticking with it. I promise I will be back. One other thing I wanted to discuss before I jump into this week's Rage portion of the show is we had an untimely passing in our community recently. You may have seen this individual in the streams and chats of all various shows around the Warcraft and other communities. It went by Sir Cappy Poo, at Sir Cappy Poo on Twitter. Also known as Cap Caponis Joe, had a bunch of names, and this individual unfortunately passed unexpectedly recently. And a friend of the show, Allie from Live Laugh Lore, put out a message to let folks know about this. And I'll say for my part, I did not really know him. We came across each other, cross paths, I believe, when I was a guest on the Third Faction, but I always saw him out there, active in the community, people engaging. And what really struck me is when you look at Ali's post, this is from June 8th, announcing to our community that he had passed away, the outpouring of support, of people talking about their love, their experience for him, and the effect that this individual had on them by being active in their communities, by being supportive in their communities. And other comments popped up about internet friends, right? It's something that we talk about here and elsewhere. And it's not a new thing, but it is a real central part, I believe, of our modern times, this digital age, where you can have friends, and I have people I would consider friends, several in fact, who I've never actually met them in person. All the years I did this show with Navox, we never met in person. We never shared one hug or handshake or a meal together. It was all from across the country via the power of the internet, right? But I would consider him my friend. There are people on my raid team I've been with almost 10 years. Would consider some very good friends on that team that I've never met. Some I have, some I've been lucky enough to meet. In fact, I got to meet up with a friend of the show, Barian, and my raid leader. He was in town recently, and I got to meet up with him. And number one fan of the show, Rommel. The three of us warriors got to meet up for some lunch recently, and that's always great. It's such a rare thing for many of us to actually meet up with these people in person, and that was the first time that we had all met him in person. And it's such a great experience, I find, most of the time, to finally put a real human body to that experience. But that's not always possible. But for many of us, it's actually kind of okay, because the friends that we make, the friends no matter where we make them, whether it's in person, whether it's online, the bonds, the trials, the tribulations, the things that we go through, it's all very real. Like, you can't be on a raid team and not tell me you ain't been through some shit with your team. we all have. Sometimes it breaks up a team, but many times it makes that bond stronger. And I know that that's what I've been lucky enough to experience with the team that I'm on now. And there are people that, oh, those aren't real. I find that from the older generation more often than others, but it's there's some of it across the board. But oh, those aren't real friends. You've never met them. Well, I'm here to tell you, from this warrior, they're real. They're very real. These are people that will pick you up when you're down, will help you out when you need it most, will push you when you need it. And that's what friends are. I mean, what else are friends for? Okay, maybe they can't come over to my house every Saturday night and drink beers. If that's your definition of a friend, yeah, good for you. Then I hope that you've found those people in your life. But for many of us, that definition extends beyond that to include people that perhaps we can't physically get together with, but over the power of the technology that we have now, we can get together and we can share these experiences and we can forge real bonds and real friendships. So, my condolences to Cap's friends and family. It had a great effect on our community, and my heart goes out to all of you. And for those of us still here fighting the good fight, don't forget your friends. Reach out to them if you need to. Treat them well. And together, we'll find a way. We'll find a way forward. So now, I have an item that was brought to my attention by the power of email. And it's something that you know I'm not going to be able to let go of easily. So let's jump into the rage portion of this show. Let's go. Let's rage. So against my better judgment, those of you that have listened to the show long enough know that I have a love-hate relationship with the Blizzard store in its many forms, including a Shadowlands Collector's Edition that somehow disappeared into the ether, or statues that, gone this way or that. And pieces that have not exactly gone as planned, or purchases that have not gone as planned. I have a love-hate relationship with that entity, but I do get a lot of their emails. This sale, that sale, this item, that item. They keep me up to date. And I do read them. Shamefully, I read them. I shouldn't, but I do. Because you never know. There could be that one thing like, oh damn, I gotta have that. I gotta add that to the collection. There's another T-shirt of the 1,000 that I already have. Oh, I need one more. But this week, I got something that I wasn't sure I was looking at the right thing at first. But sure enough, in my email, and I saw an article for this too. Apparently, there is yet another Sylvanas statue for sale. Not one, but two. Another one. And it's not a shitty one. It's a nice one. It is a full 1/3 bust of Sylvanas Windrunner. Now, there was already a banging $600 17-inch premium statue where she's looking all badass on a cliff edge or something with a snarly look, and she's got her bow handy, like she's ready to roll. Amazing piece. Like others that they had done. Illidan, Jaina, looking all fantastic. Thrall. Why did we need another one? Where's my Varian statue? Where's my James Raynor from StarCraft statue? Why is the Lich King statue, the other one that I might want, $1,100 versus these others that are $600? Oh, what's that? It's 46 pounds? How much are these other ones? 12 pounds? 15 pounds? Oh, shit, that thing is huge. Well, no wonder it's $1,100. Nonetheless, we're putting this character to bed. I thought we were done. But no. Does it look cool? Yeah, it looks hella cool. Does it got some sweet detailed armor? Of course it does. Is it hand-painted? You know it is. Is it probably the best representation of any character we've ever seen in a statue form? Yeah, probably. But did we really need another one? I don't know. I keep waiting for dead characters to come back and get their statues and get their due. Maybe I'm just behind the times. But come on! Another Sylvanas statue. You haven't even sold out of all the Illidan ones yet. And that one's like way old. Well, this will not stand. I don't know how. I don't know why. We're going to get a variant statue. I'm starting a petition. Change.org. Someone. Get that variant statue going. I've seen one in person. I know that they have one out there somewhere. Steve Wang, who makes some of these big, crazy ones. There's got to be one out there somewhere. Would an Anduin be okay? I don't know that I'd buy an Anduin one. Not yet. Not yet, but I have an idea, and I'll tell you about it later in this episode. But nevertheless, there is a 1/3 scale bust of Sylvanas Windrunner for pre-order. $430, expected February of next year. If that's your kind of thing, well, fine, good for you. You get something you want. Yeah. That is pretty crazy, though. It does look pretty amazing. Man. Anyway. One of these days, we'll get one of the ones, one of our Unshackled Fury gods. Unshackled Fury gods. That's one of the Pantheon. We'll get one of those up there, but no more. No more Sylvanas. We're done. The story's done. The books, the busts, the statues, the storyline. It truly is time for Sylvanas to take a rest. And on that note, let's jump into patch 9.2.5. Haven't had a chance yet to talk about all of the hidden stuff, the things that were expected to come, the things we did not expect in our news section. So why don't we jump into that? Let's go. All right. So, patch 9.2.5, the last substantive content patch for the Shadowlands expansion, has been out now for about 2 weeks by the time you hear this show. And prior to its launch, really the big thing was the cross-faction rating, I think that was the biggest key feature that people were looking for. There was some other stuff here and there, but that was the big one. But as we got closer to the patch going live, it started to become apparent that there was more on the horizon. And Blizzard finally did something that I have long lamented on this show. And I know many others have been on this same train of thought, which is to start hiding more of these materials on the PTR, or from the PTR, I should say, and from data mining. So that way there's not 9,000 Wowhead articles about a whole bunch of cool stuff, and by the time we get to it, we're tired and bored of it because we knew about it for months ahead or weeks ahead or whatever, and it's already been analyzed, and Bellular's got 50 fucking videos, and we're just over it by the time it's live. And that's always been one of my biggest complaints, is the amount of data mining. When I went on Girls Gone Wild and they asked me what was the topic I wanted to talk about, that was it. Whether data mining is good or bad for the game. I think it's bad. PTR, I think is fine. You go on there, you test stuff out, rip it up, see what's good, see what's not. But the data mining drives me crazy, and this patch did it beautifully. They hid the right stuff. Some stuff got data mined, but the cinematics, we got some new cinematics, folks. If you haven't played through the content yet, this could be spoiler territory for you then, but it's been out for a couple of weeks, so I hope if you're listening to this, you've played through it by now. If not, this will be your primer. And I'd still encourage you to check it out because it's great material. It's some of the greatest material of certainly this expansion. And I think in some ways we have one of the greatest in-game cutscenes that we've ever had. And I'll talk about why. So first, the animations. And we, you've heard me say this 1,000 times, and I keep saying it because I don't understand really the limitations of the in-game cinematics, the cutscenes, all that stuff. I don't really have an understanding of what the true potential of that is, other than eventually you get to the full pre-rendered CGI, looks super real, that quality, pre-expansion cinematics. Like that's the ultimate. That's as high as you can get. But the in-game ones that kind of straddle this line between in-game models and animation, like Pixar style animation is it seems like what we're heading towards. And the animation quality in the hidden cinematics that we got were the best yet. Super smooth, looking closer to almost real animation, to the point where their mouths are now starting to look like they are actually forming words. They are matching the voice lines that you hear, and that is just another level of technical achievement that they are reaching. Whether it's the models themselves, the quality, the higher quality, the little bits and bobs around the bodies, how things move, whether it's hair or cloth or armor or whatever it is. So now these facial animations are getting more in depth and more lifelike as we go. And this crop coming out of this patch were some of the best yet. And there were 3 that we got out of this expansion. One was in Ardenweald, had to do with Tyrande and all of that jazz. One was for Horde only, and this had to do with Kalia and Lordaeron and the Horde and all that, and the Forsaken. The last, which I'll touch on last, had to do with Sylvanas and Anduin. And that one, that's the one. And I think that's the one. I know that's the one because of how I feel about that storyline, about how I feel about our boy King, all of that stuff. But let's start with what happened in Ardenweald. So what was nice about these, all of them, but starting with this one, is that there was not some overly lengthy thing you had to do to get to them. 2 of them you basically just had to show up and watch. This was one of them. And we were sent, go to Oribos, you're sent to Ardenweald to go witness this cinematic, and it was titled The Queen's Gift. And most of this was a conversation between Tyrande and the Winter Queen. And the overall theme that we're getting out of this one is, as we've watched Tyrande go through Shadowlands, vengeance, like for so many, has been forefront of her mind going through this expansion storyline. But it's immediately evident in watching this one that she is choosing hope over vengeance. Again, a common refrain that we are seeing for many characters as we wrap up this expansion. Choosing instead to look towards the future, to rebuilding, to being stronger from that position, as opposed to unleashing your anger and your pain on someone or something else. Continuing that cycle of trauma. As we talked about some time ago, where the beginning of Battle for Azeroth, and you hear Sylvanas' voiceover talking about this cycle, and she's talking about in Shadowlands this cycle. And in many ways, what we as a player see is not the cycle necessarily of life and death, but the cycle of trauma that continues to be repeated. Very much like it is in life oftentimes, where somebody experiences trauma of a very deep kind, and not knowing how to reconcile that, they inflict that pain onto someone or something else to exercise that, to live with that in some way. And many of our characters were the same. Uther was the first that we saw, dropping Arthas's body into the maw. Obviously something he regretted. Came around and said, ooh, that probably wasn't good. As we went through with Tyrande, had her chance to kill Sylvanas when her power was taken from her by Elune, and there was a lot of questions about that. But now here we are, with Tyrande accepting that hope is the path that she wants to go down, and the Winter Queen now presenting her with a new tier of Elune created from a seed that had been created in an earlier questline. Now, for those of you that don't remember, the Tier of Elune, or the Tears of Elune, that was one of the pillars of creation from Legion. Remember, we had to go around in each zone. We had to get like a thing, and then we had to go back to Dalaran, and we put it in a little station there, down in they had to take like a little portal down into the belly of Dalaran. The Tears of Elune, that was one of the things that we had to get for that. But it was stolen by Xavius. Remember Xavius, hoof-looking motherfucker? Stole that in Legion, tainted it, and used that to corrupt Ysera. You see the circle here? Eventually, in that story, we were able to salvage it, and then we used it along with the other Pillars of Creation to close the Burning Legion's portal at the Tomb of Sargeras. So that was the old one. This is now the new one. And so this seed, you see the seed come flying in. And the Winter Queen tells how these souls that had been lost and now recovered, these Night Elf souls that have been lost and now recovered from the Maw, that many of them, rather than stay in Ardenweald, they were promised a place to rest in eternity in Ardenweald. They chose instead to incorporate themselves into this seed. So rather than live this eternal life, they decided that they wanted to be, as the Winter Queen puts it, part of a new beginning for their kin. And you see these sort of ghostly apparitions begin to turn into wisps, which we're all familiar with. Wisps, World of Warcraft. In fact, we've seen them in a very prominent role before. Quite some time ago, in fact. And in this instance, where these ghostly bodies become wisps and they go into the seed and they begin to empower it, and I think most people agree, it's very reminiscent of an extraordinarily important lore scene in Warcraft 3, where Archimonde, remember Archimonde? It was during the battle for Mount Hyjal, so this goes way back. In Warcraft 3, he's climbing the world tree Nordrassil, and it seemed like everybody was screwed at that point. Like, oh, he won. He's banging the tree. It's over. When thousands of Night Elf souls, thousands of wisps, come out of the forests and begin to bombard him to the point where they essentially overload him and he explodes. Of course, it damaged the tree. It took away the Night Elf's immortality because it was tied to that world tree, and that world tree was essentially blown apart. But this scene in Ardenweald, very reminiscent of that. So again, these souls sacrificing themselves. I don't know why the Night Elves are the ones that are constantly sacrificing themselves for the good of all. But in this instance, it's mainly focused on what may be the future for themselves. So these wisps in Ardenweald, they empower this seed, and it becomes a new tier of Elune. And one has to ask themselves, what is the purpose of this seed? So you see the cinematic and Tyrande receives this new tier of Elune, and it comes with the promise of a new beginning for the Night Elves. And afterwards, there is a conversation. Always stay for the conversation, folks. The cinematic is not always all there is. Talk to other characters. Look and see if you can see other conversations going on. There is a post-cinematic conversation with Chandris, Ysera, and Tyrande, where Ysera suggests that there is a place that this new seed can be protected, and that her daughter, Marithra, will know where that is. And where do you think that is? Could it be the Dragon Isles? Could be. Could be. Could it be possible? Could it be possible that this could be the beginning of a new world tree? A new home for the Night Elves? Entirely possible. One of the great tragedies that we've seen in our game in recent expansions has been the burning of Teldrassil. We know how controversial that was then. It really hasn't ceased to be as controversial in the time since then, where now we know that that was a holy shit moment that never really had a planned exit. That the explanation for it since in Shadowlands has been, not the most well received. I mean, they kind of made sense, but boy, it was tough to swallow. So it would seem that this storyline, as far as Shadowlands is concerned, is being wrapped up in a way where the Night Elves may be looking at a new home for themselves, a replacement for Teldrassil. On top of that, of course, one of the big reveals questing through Ardenweald was the return of Ysera. Big moment in Legion when Ysera died. Lots of people legitimately crying over that death scene. It was a big damn deal when it happened. And so to see the return of Ysera, which I didn't, again, this is why data mining I'm not the biggest fan of, because that was a big surprise for me. I stayed away from a lot of that stuff prior to playing through Shadowlands. And even as it started getting hinted at, I was like, huh? Who? What? Holy shit, it's Ysera. That was a big surprise and a welcome one. But people began immediately asking, I think, okay, so Ysera's back. Does that mean Ysera's like back? Is that just Shadowlands back? Like, what does that look like? So there is another conversation at that same place following the cinematic where Tyrande asks Ysera, all right, are you coming back? What's the deal? And Ysera says that it will take a greater sacrifice, unspecified, for her to return to Azeroth. Tyrande being Tyrande is like, all right, we'll pay, we'll do anything. What's up? How do we make this happen? And Ysera essentially says that her return to Azeroth could happen, quote, if Elune wills it. Right? If, quote, Elune wills it. Dragon Isles, new land, maybe new home for the Night Elves. Seems like a place where, Ysera might, dragons, right? Come on. Could make an appearance. I find it to be a nice tie-up for where we're at. At least, I think, as smooth, as clean as we can get on this one. There's been a lot of questions about the way that Tyrande has been handled. You have an all-time badass warrior. I know she's not, warrior class. She's druid, I think. But a warrior in the truest sense. A fighter, a leader, somebody who has no quit. One of the toughest characters we have. And she hasn't always gotten the best treatment. So to see her choosing hope instead of vengeance, to have literally the future of her people in her hands, and the possibility for more welcome returns in the future, it's a very positive note, I think, for this particular storyline and for the Night Elves, and it's well deserved. Long suffering, they've dealt with a lot of blows, big blows, heavy blows, heavy as any race could get in World of Warcraft. So it was a great cinematic. It was a callback to old times. Looking forward to new times and getting characters in the right place. So A+ on that one. A+ on that one. Really enjoyed. The second one that I wanted to talk about, this one actually had a quest line involved, and that was the Return to Lordaeron quest line, which began with Gen Greymane. Gen Greymane for us Alliance folks, and it started with Kalia for her Horde folks, and it sent us to Lordaeron on a mission to cleanse it of the Blight. If you remember from Battle for Azeroth, it got laid to waste by the Blight after our battle there, so it was uninhabitable. It was no man's land, basically. And so Kalia, who has been on this mission of trying to figure out where she fits all this, Kalia Menethil, right? A Menethil, that name alone, stained through history. I'm surprised we still have Menethil Harbor, quite frankly, in the Eastern Kingdoms, but it's there and underwater. I don't know, maybe symbolic. But Kalia's been on this journey not just to cleanse the blight of Lordaeron, but also to find her place. Where is she? Because unlike other Forsaken or undead, she wasn't raised by the power of death or death magic. She was raised by the light, and so she is in this very unique position to be undead, but via a different road. And so that puts her kind of at odds with what we've traditionally known about how the Forsaken were created, how undead are created, and what that looks like. And so she's been battling things on a few fronts. And so we get sent on this quest line where we are trying to convince various members of the Forsaken to come along with this plan of hers to deal with the Blight. And by going around and talking to, well-known characters, Lillian Voss, right? Lillian Voss. There was a Dark Ranger Velenora, Deathstalker Commander Belmont, and Master Apothecary Farinel. We had to go through and convince them, like, hey, come on, we got to do this thing. There is eventually a Blight Eater that we can employ to take care of this, but we need to get a sample of the Blight, so we got to help Kalia, and on and on. But eventually we get to a point where we go to Maldraxxus, where I don't like going, but it's dead on in its aesthetic. And we have to talk to Margrave Sindain. Sindan. I can't remember how to pronounce the name. Forgive me. But there's a very important conversation there, which is central to Kalia's storyline, that occurs. And Kalia is able to ask Sindan. I'm sure there's somebody screaming at me right now. Where do they fit here? Because Kalia says the Forsaken were raised through necromancy, and this shared origin has provided them a sense of unity. I, however, was raised by the light. That difference has caused me to wonder if I can ever truly find a place among them. And the response that she gets is that necromancy is necromancy. Essentially. That whether it's through death magic, through the light, whatever, it's all viewed the same by them. And so that's the way that she should look at it. And it seems that she takes that to heart, and we go through and we get the Plague Eater and we go and clean up Lordaeron, and as you figured that we would. We have to fight this giant plague blob monster. It was funny. Fun little quest line. And we get to the end, and at least for us Alliance players, this was the end for us, where we then see the creation of what is the Desolate Council. So I guess the Horde's going to have a council, and the Forsaken's got a council. As somebody who deals in real life with a lot of entities like this, good luck. Because you're going to have 15 minds that all think wildly different things, and getting them all on the same page is going to be a pain in the ass. I know it's not 15. It's like 10 or 9 or whatever, but it's still a source for controversy. And if they don't make that a source for controversy, I'm going to be very sorely disappointed. But now they have a desolate council, and all of the people that we've talked to, they are now the new Forsaken leadership. And rather than have, it's kind of like with the Horde, with what happened with Garrosh, they decided that we're going to go council style, so no one person has all of this authority. Forsaken are going to do the same. After what they've had with Sylvanas, is really their only leader. Sylvanas has been there from the beginning, and after she became war chief, there was some distance there, but she was always the true Forsaken leader, and now obviously they had no one. So that seemed like where we were going to end it. Lillian, Velinara, Belmont, Kalia, Farinel, Desolate Council. Oh, but wait. Yet another surprise lay in store, as something that people kind of expected to happen this patch, but there was no hint about it whatsoever. Or at least, not to me. I didn't know about it. The Dark Ranger. The Dark Ranger customization came to pass. There was a little quest after the Desolate Council comes to formation where you are now given, you now have the ability by completing this quest and basically just talking to people right there. You are given the ability as a Blood Elf, Night Elf, or Void Elf to take on a Dark Ranger customization with the red eyes and the pale skin and the whole thing. And even further, if you do this on a hunter, there is a special Dark Ranger transmog just for you. And I think for a lot of folks, that was probably the biggest and most welcome surprise of patch 9.2.5. Now, as somebody who doesn't play a hunter, even I think that transmog is pretty sweet. And a lot of us did feel that after everything that has happened with Sylvanas and everything else, a Dark Ranger customization makes a lot of sense. That class, that group of characters is out there. It's part of Warcraft canon as any. And so it makes a lot of sense for that option to become available. And they explain in game how it could be Horde or Alliance or whoever. And so that is finally officially in game. And even further, and possibly the biggest surprise for me as an Alliance player, is that at the culmination of all of this questline, we get a letter from Kalia to give to Gen. And essentially what the letter says is that this Desolate Council is going to look to get all of the troops that they have out of Gilneas and to return Gilneas to Greymane and the rest of his people. The Gilneans might actually finally be able to go home. For anyone who's played through the Worgen introductory quest line, Gilneas is a really fantastic place. It's an asset that is sorely underutilized, because as a town, as a space, whatever you want to call it, it's phenomenally built. And to not have that as a hub option has been a crime. And so now to see Gen kind of coming down from his own vengeance streak where he's been, and for him to accept this and to say, this is welcome news. If I find myself surprised in a pleasant way for the first time in a long while, let us all hope that the future is indeed brighter. So here we are, yet another one. Greymane. Hope versus vengeance. Seeing a path forward that is not destructive. The Forsaken coming together. Kalia beginning her road of acceptance. Hope, not vengeance, not outcast. we've heard about this theme in Dragonflight of renewal, of exploration, of trying to find a new base level. This is another example where it feels like that groundwork is being finally laid in a solid foundation. If Greymane, of all people, who has been bloodthirsty for pretty much every expansion since we've met him, to see him now come down and feel hope, that's a big one. To me, that's a big one. For the Horde, you get one extra special piece, and that is the cinematic that comes. Walk with Ghosts is, I think, the quest. Where Kalia and Lillian Voss go into the Lordaeron throne room, and Kalia reckons with her past, being the last Menethil, being in the room where her brother had killed her father, had truly become, had his, Darth Vader moment, where he truly became evil, killing his own father, the blood still staining the floor. You can still go there and see King Tyrannus' blood on the stones on the floor. Her reckoning with that finally, and coming to accept through this conversation with Lillian Voss that the Forsaken are her new family, that she can move on, that she can let go of this past, that if she can work to become part of this new family, it seems like anyway, the intimation is that new family is going to work to be with her. And so, like Gen, seeing hope, like Tyrande, seeing hope, these groups coming together after long periods of conflict, internal conflict even, and finding that road forward. Again, killer work on that cinematic. I love being in that throne room, even as Alliance. It's a big lore spot. Just going in there, you can go in there and hear the sounds of what happened, what transpired. If you turn up the ambient noise and you turn down the rest and really jack up your speakers, you can hear the sounds of what transpired in the past, and it's spooky as shit, but it's really cool. And as I understand it, when you go through that cinematic, you no longer hear those sounds. That is interesting, if true. But a great job on that. Fun to go through Lordaeron. Glad that that's cleaned up. Horde folks, I guess, get it back. Maybe Gilneas will be an option for Alliance in the future. Well done all around. And last, but certainly not least, you knew I'd save this one for last, is the final cinematic we see of what is, in my opinion, the most important storyline of Shadowlands, which is an in-game cinematic involving a conversation between Sylvanas Windrunner and Anduin Wrynn down in the mall. As you recall, in the novel, in the Sylvanas novel, the book ends, and I got really excited about this at the time, the book ends with Sylvanas in the mall, having now been judged and sent on her mission to reclaim every soul that was banished to the mall during the time of the jailer. And there was a presence that came to Sylvanas, and then she heard a distinctive clank, and we were all pretty sure that was Anduin. Well, this cinematic, which you didn't have to do any quest to get to, you just had to go to Oribos. There was Dorothir, Tyrande's owl, and it said, "Hey, come see my vision." And sure enough, Anduin is there. Anduin approaches her, and they have a bit of a conversation about where everybody is. We see Sylvanas at first. She's reclaiming one of the souls, it looks like from one of the Mossworn that she had slain. And as she hears Anduin approach, she's surprised. Why are you here? What are you doing here? You should be feel to go home. You should be free to go home. You should feel free to go home, I should say. And he describes to her these feelings of guilt about how does he reconcile how he feels with all the things that he's done. Was it by the jailer's choice or his own that perhaps maybe he felt some satisfaction in what he was doing, some exhilaration the killing, with the destruction that he was responsible for. And it seems now that the tables have turned, where they seem to be frenemies, perhaps, let's say. Anduin is now, in a way, perhaps coming to her for advice. It's a little hard to tell why exactly he comes to her, but he explains that he enjoyed what he had done, and he doesn't know how to reconcile that. And so Vanas tells him that you have to come to terms with this, essentially, like I did. And he accepts that, and they both agree that now, for him, the work that she has done is now the work that he will have to do. And they part. Until next time, essentially. And so when we see them, Vanas is just beginning her journey of her own, right? The journey of reclaiming all these souls in the mall. I believe that she's more willing to do this because she's looking for one in particular. We don't know what happened to Nathanos. He was slain, he disappeared. We thought maybe he was a pawn somewhere in the scheme, but he never reappeared. And so you have to believe that part of her journey now is finding Nathanos, reclaiming his soul, and being together with him, as she very clearly loved Nathanos in whatever way she could. And now that her soul is completed once again, maybe she can feel that for real. And perhaps this is her opportunity, at least in this moment, to be a guide for Anduin. To be a guide for our young king who is at a crossroads. Is at a very big crossroads for him. And as they part, you can see the transition where she used to throw Little Lion, was her name for him. It was a barb. She would say, "Oh, Little Lion." But as they part, she uses that as a farewell in a genuinely soft sentiment. And you see now the reversal of how this relationship, I think, once was. And we know that she's going to be there as we send her character off into the sunset, as I mentioned earlier, with everything else that's going on. It's clear that this is where we will leave her for a while, and she will be down there doing her thing. And until our paths cross again. That was how they left it, and I do believe that their paths will cross again, as our paths with them will cross again. But that is sort of her ride off into the sunset, is giving him a little bit of a boost, maybe a little bit of a thought about what is or isn't free will, as he explains to her that the things he does, he has to do because he's the king, and she kind of throws that barb back at him now. I thought you said we had free will. And for Anduin's journey, it's just beginning. As we all know, talked about many times, Anduin's character is very tragic. It's all he's ever known is tragedy, strife, war, mother killed at an early age, fleeing across oceans, one war after the next, his father brutally sacrificed to save his people, Anduin sending fleets of his own people to die, soldiers coming back, burials. Right? It's been very difficult for our young king for a very long time. And so I have to wonder, when he talks about how perhaps he enjoyed the damage that he had wrought, even as the jailer's pawn, that there was a sense of exhilaration for him. That perhaps, again, that cycle of trauma being inflicted and then inflicting upon, that he is now perhaps dealing with something like that for the first time, where all of his life is just getting hammered, one thing after another, after another, after another, and these heavy expectations on him to weather all of this at such a young age, and to make good decisions, and to make the right decisions. And never is there a place in there for him to let all of that out, because believe me, that comes at a cost. To bear that weight has to go somewhere. There's not just this infinite space inside. If we take Anduin as a person, there's not this infinite space inside that can just take all of it and never be affected or never have to let it out. Maybe this was a part of him that when he was able to lash out, to be angry, to be vengeful, to feel that peace within him that wanted to get out. I could believe that. I could believe that very much. And now he's reckoning as a character with real trauma. How can I look at my friends after I've done this? Anybody that's been to a far enough place in their life to have hurt family or friends, to make a change in their life, a real change, and to come back and to make amends, that is one of the most challenging things you can ever do. And Anduin's in that now, where for him, there's a variety of things that have happened, but he's not ready to bear that weight, and that's a great decision for that character to make, I think. To recognize that now is not the time, because I need, as I talked about at the top of the show, I need a break. I need to get my mind right. I need to figure out where I am in all of this, because he has a great fear now that if he calls to the light, that it will not answer him. That's a big thing. That's a big thing for a supposed priest. Paladin. He's afraid that the light will not answer. For those of us that are, around the Star Wars community, right? The light, the Jedi, battles that we're seeing with various characters that we love, having a struggle to reach their power with the Force, a connection with the Force, right? It's a similar concept, I think, with Anduin. Is where he's been, challenges that he's had. Will the light respond to him? Will it forsake him? Think back to Shadows Rising, and at the end of that, where we were told of a little void tendril, little void magic, little void power within Anduin, and is this part of that as well, where there's a rejection of the light because there's a fear there and an embrace of something else? Is it possible he's going void side? We've been asking this for quite a while. We asked the question here of free will. Does he actually have free will? Sure. Can he put down the mantle of king? Can he wait? Right? Can he bear the weight of a kingdom, of a crown? He says a king does not have a choice. That's where Sylvanas throws back. I thought you believed in free will. And this is his big question. Who is Anduin Wrynn? Is he a king? Is he someone else? Who does he want to be? At that age, you think about any of us that are old enough, you think about where you were in your early 20s. You don't know who you are. You don't. You can't. You're too young. You haven't done enough. There is a version of who you are, but I don't believe my life's experience, I don't believe you really know who you are until you're a bit older. Sometimes it happens a little earlier, sometimes it happens a little later. I think your life experience really dictates that. For Anduin, I think it's going to be on the younger side, if we take him, again, as a real person. But to know oneself is a journey that all of us must undertake at some point. And to see Anduin go through this journey, or to begin to go through this journey, I find that to be a very nuanced tale for a video game like this. That's tough. There's a line that Sylvanas says about how now the work begins. And anyone who's ever been through therapy, I think, can relate to that. It's to know that road, that first step to that long journey of resolving these internal conflicts, to accepting the things that you've done, maybe under less than ideal circumstances, but to come to grips with that and to accept that that is what has happened, that's who you were at that time, but who do you want to be? Who are you? And that's where Anduin Wrynn is. And as he walks off out into the mall or out into wherever he's going, out of our foreseeable future here in World of Warcraft, he has to ask himself those big questions. And I'm sure that our beloved writing team will be coming up with something, if they haven't already, as to where that goes. I, for one, would love to see him come back, in a while, with a big, Captain America style return with a big beard and the whole thing, and sexy as fuck, and it's gonna be great. And he'll be, badass and wielding the light and maybe a little void and, feeling confident, feeling good about himself. Because meanwhile, Terralian's sitting on the throne, and I don't know if I like that because, I keep hearing rumors about light versus void and Terralian and Ilaria and possibly some other characters from some alternate Draenors coming up, and I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. But our boy's going to go on a journey, and I'm going to miss him while he's gone. I love watching this journey, but we have another one to take here soon, and I think that'll be well worth it in the interim. But overall, these surprises, these cinematics, extraordinarily well done. The Sylvanas Anduin one most of all. We're getting closer to that Pixar level every cycle, and I wish it didn't have to be this way, but I'll take it. I'll take it however it comes. Anduin, we'll see him down the road. Sylvanas too. The rest of the characters are moving on with hope in their hearts, as we should as well. A couple of other items that popped up, 9.2.5, just quickly. If you haven't done them yet, if you have a Dark Iron Dwarf or a Blood Elf, there are some Heritage quests, Heritage Armor quests. There's also some mounts involved. I haven't done them yet. I briefly skimmed a couple of them. They look pretty fun. My understanding is that the Blood Elf one may have some context as to what's going on with the Scourge since the events of the Shadowlands, so that could be good. Cross-faction raiding, of course, open raids, dungeons. Grab your Horde or Alliance friends if you like. In tandem with that, some people are getting emails apparently offering free faction changes for themselves and friends. So if you've got a group you've been trying to get together and you can't, hopefully you get one of these emails and you get on through. And last but not least, because I actually jumped into this, all Wings of Torghast are open, and I've actually been having some fun in Torghast once again, because this is now the silly season. We're getting into the silly season of Warcraft. After the patches are done, stats start blowing up, and they're throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. This is always a fun time. So get out there, enjoy all of that, have a lot of fun. It's always a great time in Warcraft when they're just seeing what's gonna happen, and stats are going wild. And I know for my raid team, we're banging on some heroic raid boss doors, and it's a good time. So hope everybody is enjoying the patch and continues to do so as we move along. A couple of Dragonflight updates. They have listed or they have posted some tentative trees. Remember, we're going back to talent trees. They've posted some tentative trees for Death Knights and Druids. So if you haven't had the opportunity yet, check those out and give them feedback. I keep saying it. As these trees come out, as these other items from Dragonflight come out, test them out, take a look at them, whatever you can do, and give developers feedback, because you, the community, are, I dare say, more valued in your opinions, good opinions, informed opinions, now more than ever. So get out there and give them your thoughts, whatever you have. There's also news that a Dragonflight internal alpha is now up. So remember, there's alpha, beta versions of the game. There's different versions of it. We've been seeing a quote-unquote alpha in I think Shadowlands. And it looks like we may see one in Dragonflight. So it's kind of like a beta. I don't know. It's like beta, and then there's a second beta. I don't know. I don't know what the difference is, honestly, between the two. But typically, or at least we've seen in Shadowlands recent expansions, once that's popped up, it's usually just a couple of months before we see them live. So we could very well see some people starting to jump into Dragonflight for real here, July, August, September, like looking into that range. Like I said, that's kind of about the time I may be coming back from vacation, because then we're going to have a whole lot to dive into, and that'll be a lot of fun. And the last thing I have for you is I had spoken previously about an untitled Dragonflight novel that had been posted up on Amazon, and it had a release date of November 22nd of this year. And of course, for us, we're always trying to read the tea leaves. We see a release date. Hey, what does that mean? Okay, November, it means a book. So we're looking at what? Okay, December, January, February, March. What are we looking at? Well, Amazon removed that date, and there now is no date. So put the tea leaves away. There's not a whole lot to tell. I got asked recently, what does it look like for pre-orders? Does a pre-order timeline give us any idea of when a release might be? I would say 3 to 4 months if you start seeing pre-orders. That's the expected release timeline, perhaps. But we also saw Shadowlands get moved. That was the pandemic. We're still not out of it, folks. So, things are subject to change. We're still seeing a lot of games moving around out there. But nonetheless, there is a novel. It will come when we get a date. I think that will still give us some idea of when the Dragonflight expansion will be coming. But for now, no date given, so we'll just have to see what happens. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode. My thanks to all of you for listening. And remember, you can always follow me and this show on Twitter at Berserker Rage and Unshackled_Fury. You can also join our Discord, links for which are in the profile of the show on Twitter and on our Warcraft Radio page. Feel free to contact the show with your questions, comments, or otherwise through any of those resources or unshackledfury.com. And you can find the show wherever you get your podcasts. So once again, thank you for listening. Remember to keep your swords wet and your banners high. And I'll see you next time. Farewell.